Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
It's time for glory, adventure, and surprises in this week's Kickstarter Pickstarter for October 26th, 2020. Starting us off is a game that works perfectly as we approach the colder winter season, and that's Endless Winter. This is a Euro-based game when you play as tribes trying to survive in Paleo North America. It's very cold and it's going to be tough to survive. To do so, you're not only going to need to gather resources, but build up your community and try to get those points, because as we all know, in prehistoric times, points were all that mattered. In this game, you will actually be not only moving around a board in order to find the right location to build up your village, but you'll also be placing workers on these action spaces. Now, what's interesting about these is that they're not simply one action, but it's more like multiple actions on one space that you'll go through. So it's not simply choosing the space that gives resources, but choosing which spaces give the actions you want in the order you need. There will also be hunting animals. This is actually part of a set gathering aspect to give you points at the end, but there's also a deck building action. It allows you to build decks and build stronger cards, but you won't always be playing all of them. You'll actually be saving some of them for the Eclipse phase, because those cards you save, instead of getting them for their abilities, you'll then compare to other players, and that will determine player turn order, which could be very important for the actions you want to do. Through all this, you'll be gathering new members to join your tribe, or maybe learn new equipment or gear in order to maybe survive those harsher elements and hazards that are going to be thrown your way. In the end, this looks like a really cool Euro game that has I like the flavor of it, but also that deck building aspect I think is what any deck building game needs right now. We've seen plenty of games that are just deck building, but the extra layer I think brings both the more random players who enjoy maybe how like basic deck building of like, I don't know what I have and see what's going, but it still has a lot of those Euro feelings of being like set collecting, placing workers out, generally knowing where you're going to head and not having to roll dice. It seems like that kind of cool game, and it has that great aesthetic, and also, of course, very familiar art if you've been in the board game world, and maybe in the Northern Sea area.
Yeah, it looks like the kind of game that has a lot going on, which can be great sometimes in a game. There's all like a mix of different mechanics, like you said, kind of a blend of American and Euro styles of games. The worker placement thing sounds cool too. The way that you said there's kind of multiple things that can occur as a result of where you place your workers. A lot of stuff that sounds like it's worth taking a look at.
And of course, a lot of the cards have like multiple choices, which, you know, we both like, because that means they're not only more versatile, but it's not simply you have the winning combo in hand and you just play out your hand. Usually you have to actually think a little bit more. And then you throw in that Eclipse thing, so you have to decide whether you really want those like resources or whatever the card provides, or if you need to go first for some reason. It's that kind of making choices that are that could vary depending on the situation, which so that adds that versatility that I think a lot of people want in a game.
Yeah.
Now, if you're looking for just the base game, that goes around $60, but of course, you can go all in with the Chieftain Pledge at $120.
From the company called Panic Roll, we're looking at a game called Townsfolk Tussle. This is a miniatures cooperative battle game that has an aesthetic very similar to 30s and 40s cartoons, or something akin to Cuphead if you're looking for a more recent example of that animation style. Players are choosing different characters with different stats and abilities, and you have to defend your town from the local ruffians that have come in because your sheriff has died. And there are going to be multiple rounds, and each round will have a new ruffian coming out. They're going to have their own different styles, their own terrain setups, and depending on how things are laid out on this board, the terrains will have different abilities. They may be slower to walk through, etc. You're going to have a very different layout. You're going to have to approach these ruffians, which are sort of like mini bosses in a different way. And in between those fights, you're also going to be able to stock up to buy new gear, get new equipment for your characters. So as the game goes on, you'll be using different strategies and creating different kinds of builds for whoever you happen to be playing as, until that final round when you fight kind of the main boss ruffian. And also at this point, one of you in your group will be elected as the sheriff based on how well you did. And if that player dies in the final round, then everybody loses. So there's a different dynamic there where you kind of have to protect someone a little bit or worry more about them in that final round. Again, I think this game probably, if I had to guess, wouldn't exist if Cuphead, the video game, hadn't come out. I feel like Cuphead, if you're not familiar, uses a similar aesthetic and also is kind of like a boss rush game. You're mostly fighting bosses, and this sounds like a similar concept to me. But that's not to say, I mean, obviously they're both derivative of these cartoons from the early 1900s. I love the look of it. I love the style of it. And it looks like a relatively easy to jump into, but with a lot of different variations in the types of cards and gears you have. You can also have feat cards, which will give you sort of little rewards for accomplishing different objectives as you fight during the match. It looks like a fun thing to play, and if you like co-op games with these kinds of miniature style tactics, maybe something to look at.
Yeah, we actually missed this one. This was available possibly for last week's Pickstarter, but luckily some people pointed out in the comments, so thank you very much for reminding us of this one.
Yeah, I totally missed it, and I'm shocked. Like, I didn't see it at all, and it's definitely one that is right up my alley. I really do think that the style of it is cool. Well, I don't typically love like miniature dueling games. I think the cooperative nature of it and the way there's so many different styles of like the terrain again, and the way the different bosses work seems like something that I would enjoy. You can get the core box right now with all the stretch goals and everything for $85. Lots of minis and other cool cards and stuff in there. So if you like the look of it, check out Townsfolk Tussle.
This one's from one of our favorite game companies, Everything Epic Games, and this new series is about a group of adventurers who are working together to stop mystical artifacts from setting the world off balance and letting chaos reign. But no, this is not about the Order of Perseus, which is what their other game's about. This is actually based on an already existing property, the Librarians. This is a card game based on the 2014 TV show, which in the show, there are the librarians who are pretty much guarding the world through the secrets of magic and trying to gather up these artifacts and stop evil cults. But you will choose one of these guardians and actually customize your deck with either personal cards or cards anyone can use and actually cooperatively work together through scenarios. Now, depending on which card you have, you'll have more scenarios for expansion and stuff. And you'll play through certain things and find maybe artifacts you can bring along with you. Everything Epic Games is a big favorite company of mine, and I sort of joked earlier with the Order of Perseus because they know how to do games about groups of people who do exploring and adventure and with mystic and strange artifacts, and that's pretty much what the Librarians seems to be about. And the card game customization allows you to really change up. It's not always like this character works that way. You can depending on what cards you have, you can really add and remove some things. And of course, there's already 2 expansions you can get. I think one's actually Kickstarter exclusive, so that may be something to keep an eye out on. And, watch our videos. We've talked with them multiple times, and they talked about this in our 2020, I've lost all track of time, Gen Con video, as well as maybe spoiling some other things they have in the works.
Yeah, we had a full interview with Chris Batarlish from Everything Epic where he talked in depth about the Librarians. I think it's cool that Everything Epic now is going to have their own kind of expandable type of card game with new sets that they can put out for it. I also have not really unfamiliar with the Librarians TV show, but it sounds like the type of license that's right up their alley. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops and how popular it becomes and, what happens with future sets, future expansions and things.
Who knows? Maybe we can see some other shows that join in on this because this is a probably pretty similar property of mystical artifacts that need to be saved by a group of people. Now, if you're looking to get just the base core set, that will be around $60. But like I said, there are more expansions that they have available to you to get.
My next pick is an RPG called Shiver from Parable Games. This one is all about the spooky, the paranormal, the eerie things. They name drop some influences that maybe are properties you could play out versions of in this game, like Stranger Things, The X-Files, Alien, The Thing, really any sci-fi fantasy with, spooky, horror, paranormal elements. This has that kind of feel to it. In fact, there's no specific setting for this one. You could play it as a sci-fi adventure, medieval times, modern day, however you want. It has a series of different archetypes that you can choose from to create your characters, and then it has, of course, a whole bunch of information for monsters, weapons, items that you might want to throw into the mix. Another thing that makes this game unique is its dice system. You don't use d20s or anything like that. It has unique dice with their own special symbols, and each symbol represents one of your attributes. And depending on how skilled you are in that attribute, that's how many of those dice you will roll, and you're attempting to get more of that symbol that you're looking for depending on the challenge rating of whatever you're trying to do. There's also a talent die, and if you are talented enough in that, you can throw that into the mix, and it kind of may count as a wild, like it will add whatever you need for that specific check. You'll also be using those dice for other purposes. The GM might be using them to determine what monsters might do, for instance. So it's meant to be quicker and easier to get into, not as much faffing about looking around in the rule book trying to figure out dice numbers and rules and things like that. There's also some really cool remote stuff available for this. They have interactive character sheets and dice rollers that you can access online right now. We've seen plenty of horror and these types of elements in the role-playing world, but I really liked the look of this one. The art, I think, is cool. Kind of reminded me of a Hellboy style, which is it does have its own RPG now, but that's another one that I think would fit right into the vein of the other worlds they're kind of invoking with this one.
I mean, I like that genre. That's the thing I love. That paranormal discovery of the world, pulling back the veil. Sign me up. That dice system sounds really familiar. Actually reminds me of Escape the Dark Sector, where it's not really about numbers, but it's about the symbols you need on the dice, which I actually think is really, it changes things up. It's not simply like, I need a 14 or above for this to beat this armor class.
Right.
You have to start thinking a little differently, which I do like, because it makes it not just like, it's a D&D adjacent.
Yeah, and RPGs, Weave was another RPG that kind of has a similar thing where you're trying to get symbols. I think it's a nice thing that works well, especially for like more accessible introductory kinds of RPGs. If you want to try Shiver out, they have some quick start stuff you can look at on the Kickstarter page, or you can back the PDF for around $20, the hardcover book around $40. They've also got an art book and all kinds of other goodies to check out.
Initially, we saw from AEG, this Kickstarter is from Level 99 Games. It's a new implementation from it, though still dealing, of course, with the original designer. The idea behind this is a head-to-head fighting game when each player chooses two goddesses to use. Now, the idea behind this, though, is instead of just having their cards and going at it, you're actually going to have to build a deck from their supply. What this means is you can look at what characters your opponent picked, knowing they maybe chose a long-range person and someone with high mobility. So when you build your deck, you have to think, what cards can I put in to counter that? So it's not simply just how do I play cards to counter that, but also how do I trick them up with what cards I pull from the characters I used and vice versa. And of course, you fight on this board using Sakura petals, and you collect them to either cast abilities or maybe use them to move places. So there is more than simply just playing cards that we've seen in other combat games, many of them made by Level 99 Games.
Yeah, this does seem, like just a perfect match. It seems like the game that maybe AEG didn't find as much success with it, but Level 99 feels right. They should be publishing this in the US and other territories, perhaps.
Yeah, and the core box will come with 6 different goddesses for you to choose from, so plenty of customization there. I actually have the AEG. We have played it. It's definitely one of those games where if you like that, you need to play it like 10 times to really understand everything. It's not simply just knowing, like I said, oh, that's the range person. Now that you know what your opponent can pick, because you might not see every card they use. They could go more in on one goddess than the other. So you really have to think, how can I trip up my opponent with the deck I'm going to build? It's almost like if you've played a card game like Magic, to be like, they're going to play this card in advance, so you can rebuild your deck to deal with that.
Right. Lots of different tactics you can employ.
Starting at $29, you can get one of the original cores, but of course there are 2 other ones to get if you need more characters, more customization, more combinations.
My last pick this week is another Japanese-inspired game, and also another one that has been available before and is now available again. It's the Yedo Deluxe Master Set from Board and Dice. This was a game that was released, I think, in 2012 originally, and this version ups the ante, adds all new components, artwork, extra modules, all kinds of stuff. It's a Euro game that has bidding elements and worker placement. You are all playing as a different clan, trying to curry favor with the new shogun, trying to take out your opponents and become the more favored clan. And you're going to be doing so, again, by bidding, completing different missions by placing workers in different areas of the board, depending on what you're attempting to do. And this version of the game has a bigger box to fit more stuff, totally reworked artwork on all of the cards. It has some new things you can do. You can now set the time you would like the game to last, so there's like shorter versions of the game or slightly longer versions. You can make it friendlier to play, so it's less cutthroat, or keep it to the original where you are always at each other's throats during the game. There's new screen printed meeples, so that all looks nice, brand new player boards. Everything pretty much has been reworked and modernized to be in line with games of the current era. I think if you look back at the original game, it definitely has more of that classic Euro-style look, which feels a little bit dated. This one looks more at home with modern board games. I hadn't had the chance to try the original Yedo, but it has plenty of acclaim. People have talked about it, seem to love it, and seems like this is a great opportunity if you did love the original to really take that game to the next level and add all kinds of new options. There's even new, gameplay affecting expansions you can throw in to give you the chance to purchase new characters to play as during the game, add new unique sets of cards, all kinds of stuff. Or if you've never tried it before like me, then maybe this is a time for you to jump in and see what all the fuss is about.
I mean, it's good to see some of these games getting more love brought back, because I do think we judge with our eyes first. And that time adjusting thing also sounds fantastic, because, I mean, there are plenty of games you're like, this would be great, but we don't have that much time to play it or something. Do you know what the actual range is now then?
I believe it goes from 60 minutes to 2 hours. That's the range. So it's still going to be like a meteor game. You're not getting a 15-minute play, but
that's nice that if you enjoy that meteor game that's usually longer, to shrink it down to an hour is not that bad.
Yeah, no. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Every game should have that, really. I guess you could just house rule it if you want to for other games.
Yes, I want a 1 hour version of tic-tac-toe.
Oh boy, it's always tic-tac-toe with you. Anyway, if you want to play Yedo, check out the Master Deluxe set. It's $85, and there's plenty of other options for maybe just some of the expansions or even more deluxe components.
Some great Kickstarters there for you to pick from. We got some old games getting a new print, as well as some Kickstarters that we actually missed out from last week. You can let us know, of course, if there are more that we missed, but we do want to leave you with a preview. We've had the chance to check out Sons of Ferial. The preview video should be out now, as well as a How to Play, which is a game all about trying to defend the world of Ferial from corruption, or maybe join in on the corruption.
Yeah, it's another one of those games that has a lot going on in it. Lots of different mechanics and systems at play in Sons of Ferial. There were some interesting ones this week, I thought. For some reason, I saw 4 or 5 that were based on ancient Japan. That was a big theme this week. But like Will said, let us know in the comments what you are backing. My name is Jonathan.
My name's Will.
And this has been Roll for Crit.
We want you to like and subscribe, and if you have the chance, take a look at our Patreon.
Stay tuned to our channel for tons more tabletop gaming content. You don't want to miss it.